let's talk about the lockdown tyranny that is something that in Britain we have just come out of, but frankly this is hardly a better state of affairs in many parts of the country. So let's begin with Wales, the rainy, craggy area of Britain that we don't talk about nearly enough. And I think we do need to shine a light on Wales sometimes, because I do wonder what they're getting up to. For example, back in October, on the 23rd, Wales went into a sort of 17-day, the fire break lockdown, or whatever they called it? A circuit break, whatever it was, yeah. A very scientifically valid concept, I'm no doubt, long amounts of research behind it. But anyway, so everything was forced to close in Wales. And the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, said that supermarkets, because regular shops weren't just allowed to open and sell regular goods, non-essential goods weren't allowed to be sold in the supermarkets, otherwise it would be unfair. Unfair on who is the question, because that meant that non-essential goods like, cards or tampons or strange things like that were just covered up, even though they're just right there on the shelf in the supermarket. You're not allowed to buy them because First Minister Mark Drakeford said that would be fair. It was crazy because the retailers weren't even given rules to explain what essential meant, so it seems to have been totally arbitrary. But that went and passed, and now Wales has come out of the lockdown and, like the rest of us, have gone into the tiered system that is being implemented across Britain from today. And for some reason, Wales has gone nuts on this. I don't know why. I don't know why the Welsh have decided to go into full-on prohibition. It's such a bizarre thing. As reported by the BBC, Welsh pubs, restaurants and cafes will be banned from serving alcohol from Friday and will be unable to open to customers beyond 6 o'clock in the evening in British time. First Minister Mark Drakeford announced that the new rules are to tackle a rise in coronavirus cases.
I don't know how that works, to be honest.
He's not following the science, is he?
There's certainly no scientific basis for that at all.
What? That's so punitive. It's something like Calvin or Cromwell would have done. Sorry, you're not allowed to. We're going to stop you serving after 6 o'clock in the evening, so you can't exactly go out for a meal with your family, which is crazy. But you can't buy a beer with your meal. It's just so punitive.
I don't think there's any example elsewhere of anyone doing this either, which kind of just suggests it's a weird kind of
1920s America, probably. So are we expecting a kind of Welsh Al Capone to come out of this?
Someone's going to be
get some cider in your boyo. Okay, so obviously business groups and the representatives for the hospitality industry are like, why? Please no. This is going to destroy our hospitality industry with closures guaranteed. Indoor entertainment and visitor attractions, including cinemas, museums and galleries, are all also shut. So if you wanted to do something fun, that's literally off the table, and you can't even drink yourself and drown your sorrows. It's mad. Apparently businesses can offer a takeaway service after 8 o'clock, and if they have an off license they can sell takeaway alcohol until 10 o'clock in the evening. So you can drink elsewhere, but you can't drink in the pub while you're eating your meal.
I don't know the rationale behind this.
Can I get a non-alcoholic beer?
I'd imagine they'd probably ban that as well.
Well, yeah, but by those rules, if it's just alcoholic drinks, which is the way they've categorised it, then if I can get non-alcoholic beer, how is this preventing coronavirus? But the Mark Drakeford is a Labour Party member. He is the Labour First Minister, and this is the kind of irrational tyranny that I think that Labour are quite fond of, really. Unbelievably, it makes Plaid Cymru the sort of defenders of liberty in this case, where they say that the hospitality industry is paying the price for a lack of stricter measures after the firebreak lockdown ended on the 9th of November. So we should have locked down harder, and now we're going to have to lock down because of that. But all of this, according to Mark Drakeford, is because he thinks that there could be between 1,000 and 1,700 preventable deaths over the winter. Preventable being if we literally prevent you from having a society, then these people won't die. He doesn't speak about the people who will die from the lockdowns and from the other effects and just from poverty and various knock-on causes, because who cares? But the reason that this is all being done is because of a case rate rise. So in Wales there is 187 cases per 100,000 people, and that went up to 210 cases, and therefore no beer.
And is that 1,000 to 1,700 estimate just to do with the ban on alcohol, or is it just for the measures in general? It's not entirely clear. No,
nothing is entirely clear here. That's the problem. He just thinks that without these changes, so presumably he must be saying, logically, we're going to ban alcohol to prevent deaths from COVID. There are going to be 1,000 to 1,700 preventable deaths over the winter. Therefore, the banning of the alcohol must be key to preventing these deaths. But they can still drink at home. So it's not the alcohol itself. It's the selling of the alcohol in the pub.
The only thing I can think of is that if someone's been drinking, they're going to be more disinhibited, less aware of social distancing. But that's a bit of a stretch, really.
Yeah.
You could even have it limited to like...
Yeah, 1 or 2 beers with your meal or something.
If you're able to drive a car,
yeah,
I think that's fine.
Yeah. Mad. But thankfully, the pub owners of North Wales are not taking this lying down, as Mark Drakeford has been banned from every pub in North Wales. I'm not even joking. In a letter addressed to the First Minister, the West Conwy Pub Watch said he's been banned from more than 70 pubs for, quote, antisocial behaviour. Now, that is fantastic form of resistance in my mind, and I would like to see more of our politicians who demand lockdowns or irrational restrictions to be banned from the things that they're restricting, to let them know they're not going to be able to enjoy these things. I think that's fantastic. But so we can move to Scotland, where Scotland is in the not the highest tier. So we've got tiers 1 to 4. Tier 4 is extremely restrictive, but most people in Scotland are now in tier 3. Over 4 million people. Restrictions see cafes, pubs and restaurants allowed to open until 6 o'clock to serve food and non-alcoholic drinks to groups of up to 6 from 2 households. Alcohol sales are not permitted indoors or outdoors. Again, why? And how long are the Scots going to live with not being able to get whiskey?
I think they're going to go into shock.
This is worse prohibition than in Wales. Alcohol sales are not permitted indoors or outdoors. At least you get takeaway in Wales.
If you told me, like, last year that Scotland's going to ban alcohol, I never would have believed you.
That's ridiculous. Scotland and Wales are going to ban alcohol. Right, okay, that's nonsense. I noticed they haven't done this in Britain, though, in England, which surprises me, actually. But this is wild. And obviously all leisure and entertainment venues are closed at this level, including cinemas, because why do you need an entertainment industry? If you've got no hospitality industry, you don't need an entertainment industry. You can go and sit sober at home and enjoy that quality family time, which I'm sure everyone's getting a lot of at this point. But indoor exercise, which includes gyms, restricted to individual and not group exercise. Tier 2 in Scotland is hardly any better, really. Well, it's slightly better. In this tier, there is no in-home socialising allowed, and up to 6 people from 2 households can meet outdoors and in hospitality settings. Licensed premises can only serve alcohol indoors with a main meal, and then only until 8 o'clock, because at 8:15, alcohol spreads the coronavirus if you're eating with your meal or something. I don't know. Outdoors, you can be served until 10:30, because at 11 o'clock, again, rampant coronavirus spreading, I guess.
At least it's considerate up until that time.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, what? Most leisure and entertainment premises are closed except gyms, cinemas, bingo halls and amusement arcades, with 3 councils have been moved across to this. So, like, most people are in tier 3 in Scotland now, so no alcohol for most of Scotland. But, I mean, the rest, I imagine, are taking advantage of that 1 or 2 beers that they can have with their meals. England, the tiers that England's in, so most of England is in tier 2 now, but a substantial portion of England is in tier 3. So tier 3 being no household mixing, indoors or in some outdoor spaces, pubs and bars not serving meals, are closed. Tier 2 is the no household mixing indoors. The rule of 6 applies outdoors. Pubs and restaurants are forced to shut at 10 p.m, but at least they can serve. And Tier 1, which is just Cornwall and the Isle of Wight, the rule of 6 meeting indoors or outdoors. Pubs and restaurants shut at 10 p.m. So not a huge difference, really. But the thing that this leads us to is asking ridiculous questions, because these are ridiculous rules that don't appear to have been very successful. If they're constantly coming, we've just come out of a lockdown for like a month, and if we now still have to go into like these sort of partial lockdowns in the tiers, are these really helping? Especially as the NHS is not drastically overburdened. Like, the whole point of this isn't to, like, they've adopted the rhetoric of, you know, defeating the virus. Matt Hancock was in Parliament yesterday saying, "Oh, we've got to crush the coronavirus." Like, I don't think we can, mate. You know?
I think we actually over-prepared in a lot of cases.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
all of these, was it the Nightingale hospitals?
Mm-hmm.
I think hardly any of them actually got used in the end. They set them all up anticipating it to be far worse than it actually was.
Yep. And again, I think that they've committed to something that they're too embarrassed to walk back and admit that they've made a mistake. But anyway, we get to the ridiculous questions that we are forced to ask, such as, is a Scotch egg a substantial meal? Now, I, for one, am glad that the government is debating this. I want a national public dialogue on this, and I want this to be settled for once and for all. So in 100 years' time, 500 years' time, when the historians look back, they can go, look, we've got an answer, a constitutionally acceptable answer to whether a Scotch egg is a substantial meal or not, back in 2020 with the coronavirus pandemic. Like... Who cares? But anyway, as the BBC report, drinkers in Tier 2 areas of England could order a Scotch egg with their pint to keep in line with post-lockdown rules, a cabinet minister has said. Under new restrictions, pubs in those higher-risk areas can only open if they function as a restaurant, and alcohol can only be served as part of, quote, a substantial meal. Environment Secretary George Eustace told LBC Radio that Scotch eggs would constitute such a meal if there was table service. So as long as you don't get the Scotch egg from the bar... It's a substantial meal. But if you go to the bar to get that Scotch egg, it's no longer a substantial meal.
That seems perfectly reasonable. I see no problem there. I don't understand how it could even be in debate. Like, a Scotch egg, for anyone who doesn't actually know, is just...
They're really nice.
It's just a boiled egg with some batter and
meat
breadcrumbs.
And breadcrumbs, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a little snack sort of thing.
Yeah. They're really nice, though. You know, they're good. I mean, being honest, I don't think I would classify them as a substantial meal.
No, definitely
They're
not.
a snack.
You can eat them in one kind of bite if you really want to.
Well, if you've got a big mouth, yeah.
I probably could, I think.
But the thing is, like, this is the point, isn't it? You know, no one looks at a Scotch egg and thinks, oh, that's a substantial meal. But the Environment Secretary here is just perfectly prepared to fudge the definition of what a substantial meal is. Just because people are going to like, so I can't get a pint if I don't have a Scotch egg.
I'm pretty sure Michael Gove, he was doing the kind of the rounds on TV.
Yeah.
And at the start of the morning, it was all in one day, he was saying, oh, it's not a substantial meal. They're nice, I like them, but unfortunately they're not. And then around about his second or third interview, he was just like, oh, I'd definitely say a Scotch egg is a substantial meal. So I don't know what's going on there.
Well, as long as we've got Michael Gove's approval, then we're good to go. Like, gee, this is ridiculous. I mean, like, the Prime Minister's official spokesman said, I'm obviously not going to get into the detail of every possible meal, but we've been clear. Bar snacks do not count as a substantial meal, but it's a well-established practice in the hospitality industry that what does. Then why is it so difficult to answer the question? Why have we got two conflicting answers on the Scotch egg question? I mean, like, why can't you provide us with a list of every possible meal? I mean, you could do categories of meal if you want. Do we have to have, like, you know, meat, veg, and potatoes or chips or whatever? I mean, it should be fairly easy. But again, you created these ridiculous rules. I just think you should just let people go and live their lives. But he said, I think a Scotch egg probably would count as a substantial meal if there was table service, according to Mr. Eustace. This is ridiculous, right? But this is not the end of how ridiculous things are, because it turns out that the government ban on sex is still in force. People might not know that there's actually a sex ban in England if you don't live with the person you're having sex with, which really suggests some really inappropriate jokes, doesn't it? But unironically, as the Metro report, a ban on couples having sex if they don't live together will continue for anyone living in a Tier 2 or Tier 3 area, Matt Hancock has confirmed. So, who put Matt Hancock as the Sharia Patrol of Britain? Like, when did he get to decide, like, the kind of food you get to eat and the people you get to have sex with? If I'd said this a year ago, you'd be like, that's never going to happen.
I mean, before...
They're not going to ban alcohol. They're not going to make you have sex with only people you live with.
Before coronavirus, I didn't even know who he was, and now he's telling me what I can eat and who to sleep with. It's weird.
It's just so ridiculous. It's like... I just can't get over it. The idea that the Conservative government think that they have some kind of authority to tell me who I should and shouldn't be sleeping with, like have consensual sex with, is mad. It's absolutely mad. But anyway, mixing with others outside of your household or support bubble is still banned indoors. We have support bubbles. So is it 2 families? It's up to sort of 2 other families can interact with your family. But depending on the tier you're in, because these are horrifically complex rules, you might not be able to do it in your house. You might have to go outside to do it, because why not? Why not? I mean, so interesting that meeting up in the park with a bottle of White Lightning is still permitted, but having sex with one of those people is not permitted. Teenagers around the country, it's just like Jesus sweating. It's like something from Monty Python. It is actually ridiculous. It means the casual sex ban, which has been in place in some areas since the tier system was introduced since October the 12th, will likely continue for several more months. People living in Cornwall, the Scilly Isles, and the Isle of Wight, the only places in Tier 1, sorry, I forgot the Scilly Isles, sorry to our viewers in the Scilly Isles, can indeed meet up indoors and have sex with each other.
Congratulations.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. But just to say again, I have to stress, I don't think the government should be able to do this.
No, definitely not.
This is absurd.